Hello everyone. I just wanted to go over a strategy for expanding your paper called a concession and refutation. Basically what a concession and refutation is that in an argumentative essay, you make a little time to highlight a point that runs contrary to your overall argument, and then you spend a little time refuting that point or dismantling it. And you can do it in two ways. You can do it in one paragraph in which you highlight the argument in that paragraph, and then once you get to your explanation or analysis, you use that opportunity to dismantle or prove the point is wrong. Another way that you can do it is you can do it in two paragraphs, where you spend an entire paragraph highlighting a point that runs contrary to your argument, and then you move on and write another paragraph that tries to refute or dismantle that point and reassert that your overall argument is in fact true and correct. So let me go over this. Let me read these over for you and see if it will help make more sense. So here's a concession and refutation in one paragraph. Some people will argue that the death penalty saves lives. They will say that when a killer is executed, it becomes impossible for that person to kill again. They will also say that the death penalty is a successful deterrent to people committing violent crimes, including murder. There is data that supports murder rates dropping as executions rise. A New York Times article titled, "Does the Death Penalty Save Lives? A New Debate," reported that, according to roughly a dozen studies, executions save lives. For each inmate put to death, the studies say, 3 to 18 murders are prevented. While I find this evidence compelling, all right, so that was all about a point that runs contrary to my own, and now I'm beginning my analysis or explanation of why I think that this point is actually weak and that my position is actually correct. So here it goes, the analysis portion. While I find this evidence is compelling, I find it short-sighted as there are other ways to deter crimes, such as social programs, safety nets, and increasing opportunities in communities of need. Instead of focusing on how to punish people who commit violent crimes, I believe we should look more at why people commit those crimes in the first place. Mental health, adverse childhood experiences, lack of opportunity, and lack of education do play a significant role in the cause of violent crimes, and if we could solve these problems, we could prevent the violent crimes before they happen. So there's the concession and refutation all in one paragraph. I spend the first half of the paragraph highlighting a point that runs contrary to my own, and then after I deliver the evidence that proves that point is, has some validity, instead of using my analysis to explain why that evidence shows the point is true, I use my analysis to explain why I believe that evidence is faulty, that the point has flaws, and that my position is indeed correct. Moving on to how you might do it in two paragraphs, right? Two paragraphs takes up a little more space, gets you closer to the 5-page minimum. So, it's worth thinking about to try to do it in two paragraphs. If you can do it in one paragraph, that's fine. That'll still get you closer to the end. And that's what this is all about. Again, these I'm not requiring that you do a concession and refutation. It's optional, but it is one way of making your paper a little bit longer for those of you who might be having a hard time hitting the 5 pages. So anyway, here's a concession and refutation in two paragraphs. Some people will argue that the death penalty saves lives. They will say that when a killer is executed, it becomes impossible for them to kill again. They will also say that the death penalty is a successful deterrent to people committing violent crimes, including murder. There is data that supports murder rates dropping as executions rise. A New York Times article titled, "Does the Death Penalty Save Lives? A New Debate," reported that according to roughly a dozen studies, executions save lives. For each inmate put to death, the studies say, 3 to 18 murders are prevented. What this evidence shows us, now I'm moving on to the analysis, not refuting this claim, but actually trying to support why this is actually a valid argument, right? So I'm really taking the time to put myself in someone else's shoes who opposes my overall argument. I'm kind of completely honoring everything that they have to say and why it might be correct. that includes in my analytical portion supporting them even further, right? So what this evidence shows us is that the death penalty saves lives by preventing murders from happening. Because the murder rates drop based on executions, we should maintain the death penalty to keep those numbers down. The evidence shows us that the death penalty does indeed prevent violent crimes from happening, and therefore we have every right to use it. Right? So that's an entire paragraph from beginning to end, completely dedicated to highlighting and honoring a point that runs contrary to my overall argument. Now, in the next paragraph is when I start to refute or dismantle that point and try to assert that it's actually my position that's correct. So here's what the refutation in an entire paragraph might sound like. While I find this evidence compelling, it does not consider that there are other ways to deter violent crime. Instead of focusing on how to punish people who commit violent crimes, I believe we should look more at why people commit those crimes in the first place. Mental health, adverse childhood experiences, lack of opportunity, and lack of education do play a significant role in the cause of violent crimes, and if we could solve these problems, we could prevent violent crimes before they happen. Consider this quote from Brian Stevenson in the book. I've also represented people who have committed terrible crimes but nonetheless struggle to recover and to find redemption. I've discovered deep in the hearts of many condemned and incarcerated people the scattered traces of hope and humanity, seeds of restoration that come astonishingly to life when nurtured by very simple interventions. Now I'm going to use my analysis, right, to prove why this is true. Based on his experience as a lawyer and a social activist, Stevenson believes that we can deter and prevent murders with simple and humane acts of mercy. Instead of executing people, we should focus on how to rehabilitate them. As a nation, we have the means to do so. It is only a matter if we have the will. I believe by shifting our perspective of violent crime from punishment to something more diagnostic and healing, we could prevent violent crimes from happening by attacking the cause rather than the symptoms, right? So in one paragraph, I've offered a refutation of the previous paragraph in which I took time to honor a point that runs contrary to my own. And that's basically the spirit of a concession refutation. You take time to honor and try to put forth a point that runs contrary to your argument, and then either in the analysis portion of that paragraph, you refute it, or you can maintain why it's true or why it's a valid point in the analysis portion and use an entirely separate paragraph to develop that refutation, with a topic sentence, a quote, and then additional analysis that proves why your point is indeed correct. Okay, well, I hope that was helpful to you all. Again, this is optional. It might be helpful to those of you who are having a hard time getting the 5 pages. This is one way to expand. You can add anywhere from 1 to 2 paragraphs in your essay, which could be very helpful. And for those of you who do wish to do this, and who also maybe do wish to, do the use of personal experience, which is also optional, here at the bottom of this handout is a possible structure for how your essay might look. You can start with an introduction, do all your body paragraphs, and then I would do the concession refutation if you want to. Of course, it's optional. And then the personal experience if you want to. Of course, it's optional. And then the conclusion, right? So maybe you want to do the concession refutation and just move on to the conclusion if you're not interested in the personal experience. Maybe you do both. Maybe you just do the personal experience without the concession refutation, or maybe you do neither, just do the intro, the body, and the conclusion. All right, so I hope that was helpful and gave you all some ideas of ways to expand the essay. Free to talk it over if you need, and I look forward to reading your essay number 3. So take care, everybody, and stay in touch.